invite you to grab a cup of your favorite beverage, prepared warm or cool, and let's talk OC comparisons, shall we? I planned on releasing a video centered around an observation I had about two specific Shakespearean works, but then I decided after an 8-month hiatus that might be a bit too boring and specific of a topic to do first with the new branding. So there's that. As for the username explanation, it's quite simple actually. I have coffee in my veins 24/7 and Frappuccinos happen to be a favorite of mine. So, OC comparisons. What am I referring to when I say that? To put it simply, comparing an independent artist creation, whether it be your own or someone else's, to a professional, likely more widely known work's design in comparison. I'm sticking with this explanation because comparing your own character to someone else's character, or vice versa, is kind of similar, but not quite on the same level, so it could apply, but I just don't feel like diving into that specifically. Before I proceed, I want to make this very clear. The reason I'm making this video is to mention that most artists don't think the same way I do, and their wishes should be respected, as well as to give a bit more of a positive view on it whenever it does happen. While I don't expect many of you to agree with it, I do encourage giving it some thought. Now, I first thought of this topic a couple months ago, when I made the mistake of comparing one of my friend's characters to a character from Ghost Eyes, and they expressed to me that they didn't appreciate having any of their characters compared, so I made sure not to do it again. Now, at the time, while I did adhere to their request, I couldn't quite wrap my head around the why. It's not my place to ask why, of course, but I was curious, and after seeing a post on Instagram about something similar, I decided to make this to express my opinion. Personally, I don't mind when my characters are compared to another design. In fact, I openly welcome it for multiple reasons. I've had most of my characters for a long time, and I can acknowledge when certain media I've watched has influenced me when making that character, or if there's a coincidental similarity, I have a new reference to go off of now and help build my characters by examining what makes other characters so great. I like to think of it as one of the main reasons I've never had an OC that I would consider truly cringy, even if I've had to develop it over the years. One of my first characters, Noemi, strongly resembles Marinette Dupain-Cheng from Miraculous Ladybug, especially when I made her initial design, and the fact that she's a pastry chef from France does not make it any better. Before I changed the canonical color of his hair, Valentine strongly resembled Mozart from Classicaloid. Surprisingly, this one was pure coincidence since I made Valentine a few months before the anime was released, and even then I didn't hear about it until 2018. Lee is by far one of my favorite newer characters, but even he has a resemblance to a character. Leashed from Servamp and him literally share the first two letters of how they're dressed, and their hair bears a striking resemblance to one another. And even the manner that the white streak was formed is identical, despite my inspiration for it coming from the folklore of Marie Antoinette. If Lee is one of my favorites, then why would I not be bothered that they have similarities like these? It's simple. To me, the bottom line is that I know that despite any similarity these characters might have to someone else's, they'll always be my creations. In this day and age, you're bound to run into at least one similarity with a character, but that doesn't mean you should be discouraged by it. Inspiration is taken from everywhere we look all the time, whether it be from another piece of media intentionally or unintentionally used as a reference, or even from someone you notice walking down the street wearing an outfit you think would be neat for a design with some adjustments. It's not a bad thing to not be 100% original. In fact, it's better if you don't. If you're inspired by something, then be inspired. Take what you can use and run with the wind, because it will only make you better as a creator. From my experience, when people compare one of my characters to another that they know of, I either take comfort in that even without knowing my character, associations can be made to familiarize that person with what the character could be like, and better appreciate the unique aspects and purpose of the design. Or I could take it as a sign to adjust anything that I deem unsatisfactory the longer that I think about it when it's pointed out. Maybe I just straight up ignore it and move on. Depends on the day, really. Designs tell a lot about a character, so similar features between similar people is a compliment to me whether I intended the reference or not. I found myself thinking, what was there to be disheartened about? The character I referenced to my friend is among one of my favorites in the webtoon. Certainly among the most compelling ones to me, and it made me ask why it would be insulting to make connections to something that I personally love. Well, that's just it. The person making the comparison could see it as good, but the artist will oftentimes see their work as being unoriginal, and it can be a stab towards their creativity. My beliefs about originality being a myth at this point aside, Even if you see a connection between certain characters, no matter how justified it may be, the best thing to do if you don't know an artist's stance on it is to just keep it to yourself. The example I brought up with my friend seemed valid to me at the time because I only had a rough idea of what the character is like based on seeing his design before seeing how he was written. But really the only thing they have remotely in common is the color of their hair and eyes, and the fact that they both have stories somewhat related to religion. Frankly, my interpretation of both characters were incredibly surface level and didn't do either much justice. Please check out Ray's work, by the way. They're amazing, and they also gave me permission to use their artwork of Vince, so I'm just gonna flaunt it a bit. That doesn't make either character unoriginal, nor does that automatically make it okay to verbally relate them in front of the artist, whether they're vocal about how rude it is or not. Moral of the story, unless an artist says that they're open to it, don't compare someone's OCs to canon characters. Whether or not your intentions are pure, it's just unnecessary. Comparisons in general much of the time, but that's a subject for another video if I don't fall off the face of the earth as soon as I upload this. Seriously, I've planned like 7 videos, rebranded, and made 3 different sets of sprites before I made this. My bad. But also, artists, if someone does compare your character to someone from another form of media, my recommendation is to not take it to heart as a bad thing. Perhaps as a neutral thing if it's with a character you don't particularly care for, or even as somewhat a good thing if it's with a character you're familiar with and enjoy seeing. Remember that not everyone knows your character as well as you do, and while you should correct someone if they do compare and you don't want them to, maybe think over what they see in your character. You're doing well, I promise. A shallow observation from some random person on the internet doesn't change the fact that your creations are yours. That no matter the similarities with another character, you came up with their looks, their stories, they're yours. Take pride in it and don't let anyone damper that. I'm not sure how much sense this makes, but do let me know what you think. Oh, and if you compare someone's OC just to blatantly insult them, then you can go rot, period. Keep calm, sip on, and I bid you adieu.